Welcome back to Elevate Your Wealth, and today we will be talking about wealth creation. So, drilling down into the word, what is wealth? Wealth is when you have a valuable possession, okay? And then creation is, the ability to bring something into existence, okay? So, when you think about wealth creation, you want an asset that can continuously bring something into existence for you. So, bring into existence more value. I know people have different definitions of wealth creation. People might think, okay, handbags or cars or all that are a good form of wealth creation. If it doesn't bring something into existence for you and that's create more value for you, you might want to think twice about that. But today we'll drill down into the basics about wealth creation and pretty much take things from there. So why do you want to bring things into more existence? I think one of the key reasons for that is to be able to create more for you so you can live the life you want to live. You can get financial freedom. Financial freedom can come when you have enough that you don't need to work, and then it just creates more for you as well. So in terms of wealth creation, there are actually a few concepts there that are quite important to think about. And I think the two main groups, which many people may not think about, there's the human capital and then there's the financial capital. So when you think about human capital, this is the skills, education, and experience you have as an individual, okay? And that is actually one of your most valuable assets, especially early on. And what happens over time is that human capital is transferred into financial capital. And the ability or the better you are in creating more human capital for yourself, the better you would actually get more financial capital end of the day. So investing in yourself and continuous education, professional development, I think is the biggest thing you can do for yourself to actually create financial capital, because that would translate into that over time. So financial capital is literally when you put in assets away to do the heavy lifting for you every day. So I always think about people putting money away, and that money is working for you 24 hours. When you're sleeping, when you're awake, when you're doing other things, it's just doing what it's meant to be doing. So that's your financial capital. So in terms of financial capital as well, you want that to start working as early and as hard as it can, from the get-go. I always tell people, even if you put in $10 away, I'm happy with that. That's a good start. You're building the right habits around investing. And one other thing as well, people really need to think about where their career fits in terms of both, okay? And because some people have a short span of human capital and others have a long span of human capital. And just explaining that a little bit further, when you think about a short span, you want to think about your professional athletes, your models, your stunt performers, your construction workers, all those professions, you can only do that for a short period of time. Okay. And after that period of time, you either need to start doing something else, or you should have created enough financial capital for yourself to then stop working. So when I see professionals earning top dollar and not really doing the best they can with that money, it's a red flag as to, okay, well, you need to know that your career is a short span one, and you need to actually put a lot more away than you would so you can have more financial capital. And then your classic long span carriers would be, your doctors, your lawyers, your lecturers. Those are things you can be doing when you're 70-year-old. And those as long as you're doing the right thing and you continuously work on it, you should be able to do that into the latter stages of life. So if you think about that, those carriers are 20 to 40 year spans, okay, and which is just amazing because you can actually build lots of financial capital in that time. So now, what are wealth creation strategies? The basic thing is you need to be able to put money away. Once your human capital is actually giving you some money and you're earning dollars, you need to be able to put a certain portion of that away, because that would actually be able to grow for you and create more value for you as well. And you need to be intentional about that. You need to be clear as, okay, what am I putting away? How much am I putting away? How long is my career potentially going to be? And plan for that. There are other, will I say, benefits of having that cash flow and putting things like savings accounts and high interest rates, or putting money away for emergencies. Because if you're able to have an emergency fund, it doesn't distract you from your work, and it doesn't distract that other financial capital which you've put away to work for you long term. So things like emergency funds, savings, budgeting, very critical to ensuring that you have peace of mind. So, people always think, okay, where should I put my emergency fund? What should I do with that? How does that help my wealth creation? The main thing around that is you need to put it in an account that is easily accessible, and you only need to access it in an emergency. Okay. So seeing a nice handbag that you like is not an emergency. That's not something you should use your emergency savings for. Seeing a nice car or any other, toy that you like, a nice gadget, and it's like, oh, it's on sale, it's going to go out of sale. So that is not an emergency. So you should really know when you need to pull that money out. And it might be things like a broken down car. You really need to pay for that because it affects work, family, everything else. That's an emergency. So good places to keep your emergency accounts. And one, if you have an offset account, you want to keep that in the offset. And generally, because your offset account on your principal place of residence, the interest you're paying on that is not tax deductible. Okay, so you put that there. That is an indirect savings because mortgage rates now at about 6-7%, and if you are saving 6%, you're indirectly getting 6% as well. And that actually works better than in a high savings account, because the high savings account, you get taxed on that 6% of earnings. So the best place to put it will be in offset accounts generally. And if you don't have an offset account, it can just be in a high yield account where you can easily access that for emergencies. Okay. And, going back to why you need emergency funds as well, it just ensures you don't have to sell down assets at the least at the worst possible time, I should say. And worst possible time is the investments might have gone down temporarily and you need money, but you put everything in there and you don't have an emergency fund and you have to sell down. That's a bad time to sell. It also gives you peace of mind. When I sit down with clients, there's always an amount they have, and then we drill down into that amount as to, okay, how did you come up with that amount that you want? And you're kind of like, I don't know, it just makes me feel comfortable. So there's a peace of mind and psychological benefit as well by just knowing that there's money there. If things pop up and you need that money, it's there for you as well. So you get peace of mind. It helps you avoid debt as well, and more towards bad debt. So for example, you haven't planned for your wedding and you're then using your emergency funds for your wedding, and then emergency pops, so then you actually need to borrow some money or get a bad debt to actually fix that emergency, because usually emergencies are not things you should be borrowing for. Okay, it might even be simple things like you really need to go on a holiday, things have been stressful and you want to borrow and then go on that holiday. That is not a good use of debt. So, and a good thing about emergency funds as well, or just having some spare cash, they always say cash is king, which it is, because if you have cash, you have some flexibility. However, there is a certain limit. You don't want too much of that as well in your accounts, because if you have too much, there is an opportunity cost of that money not working as hard as it can. So it does affect your wealth creation overall. And now when we talk about investments, so the different types of investments that help you create wealth, and we're going to talk about the main ones. I said, these are not your cars, these are not your gadgets, these are not your handbags, so these will be your stocks, bonds, property, annuities, and even digital assets as well. So all those have the ability to create more value for you, and they're valuable possessions. Okay, so those are examples of assets you can actually invest in that can help you create wealth. Now, the question around that generally is, okay, well, what assets should I put in? Which ones are risky? Which ones are not? And there's a risk versus reward in investing. So if you want to get rewarded, you need to take some risk. And I'll talk a little bit about risk in a few minutes. But if you don't want to be rewarded, then you shouldn't take risk. But most people will want to be rewarded in the first place. So, but most people don't want to take risk. So you really need to understand that if you're not taking risk, you're not going to get rewarded for your funds. And the concept of risk is very interesting as well because, risk is actually chance of loss. And what is the benchmark for risk? Okay, because people are like, well, is that risky or not? Is a 7% return? Is that risky? Is a 10% return risky or not? So a good benchmark to use is the cash rate. Okay, so cash rate is what the Reserve Bank, lends out money to. That's the rate they're happy to lend money out to other banks, and generally anything above that rate means there's a risk element embedded in that. Okay, so if the cash rate is about 4.35% and you're discussing an investment that is potentially going to give you 7%, there is an embedded risk in there. That is why you can actually get a higher return. So that is a good benchmark to use. And obviously the cash rate moves from time to time. So it's a good way, because if the cash rate goes to 10%, and hopefully not, because that is affecting lots of people now. But let's assume it goes up 10% and you have an investment that is giving you 11%. There's a very minimal risk involved in that, while as if you then have an investment that can give you 20%, yes, there's a risk involved, but is it worth taking or not? And generally all those investments come down to your risk tolerance. Okay, and that risk, as I said, is chance of loss. Some people generally, when they think about risk, they think about it as a guaranteed loss. Well, it's not guaranteed until you actually crystallize your losses from any investment. So what that means is you need to understand the chance of loss. And that chance of loss, what happens over time as well is the chance of loss reduces over time. So the longer you can hold most investments for, the less likely you are to actually lose money on that. Okay. The impact of time or of the investment reduces the probability of loss. And now, okay, how do you assess your risk tolerance? And all this is really important for wealth building, because you don't want to take too much risk where you cannot sleep at night. And rather than your investments working and giving you peace of mind and you sleeping at night, you're stressing. So there is capacity to take risk and then willingness to take risk as well. And once you combine both of those, you can get a good understanding of where you actually stand in your ability to take risk. So now, capacity to take risk is just pretty much evaluating your financial situation and what you need at this point in time, and really making a decision around that. And I'll give you an example. If someone has $1 million to invest and they start off with $100,000 and they lose that $100,000, if you think about it, the capacity to take risk on the $100,000 is a lot more than someone that did not have the $2 million. Okay, so in other words, you really want to look at, if you lost this money, how would that affect your standard of living? If it affects that in a huge way, then your capacity to take that risk is very small. While as if it doesn't, your capacity is actually on the high side in that regard. And then willingness to take risk is more a psychological benefit. Okay, with that psychological benefit is more, will I have peace of mind with this level of risk I'm taking? So it really takes into account the emotional factors. And some of these may be based on your previous experience, based on, what others around you have said, and that has influenced you consciously or subconsciously. So when you find that your willingness to take risk is very limited, you really need to dig deep and understand, okay, why? Where did that come from? Is this something that I can actually work on? And generally, the willingness to take risk, once you have someone explaining and guiding you in the right way, that willingness can actually be increased, okay? And your willingness plus your capacity to take risk would actually come together and give you your risk tolerance. So a classic example is someone that has the capacity to take risks but doesn't have the willingness. We will not take risk, okay? Because that willingness really trumps your capacity and is not going to give you peace of mind. And someone that doesn't have the capacity but has the willingness to take risk, we still wouldn't take risk, okay? So there's a balance that we have to get to in terms of that. And And risk should always be looked at as a scale, or rather on a scale, on a scale of 0 to 10. So there are ways we can tone down the risk. There are ways we can actually increase that risk as well. So in terms of now the types of investment and the concept of passive investment or passive income. People always talk about passive income, and they then go into investments that are not passive enough. So what is passive income? So in my definition of passive income is something that you need to spend a very minimal amount of time or effort in managing. Okay. So when you think about that, I want you to think about if you're spending more than 1% of your time, is not as passive as it can be, because passive investment should just be, okay, you put it there, you're not worried, you understand the risk, you understand what's going on there, and maybe you look at it for 20 hours within the whole year. And that's as passive as it can get, because if you have any type of investment and you don't look at it, or you don't just review or sit down with a professional to know what's going on, I find it very hard to see that you're doing the right thing for yourself, because you still need to know where your money is, what's going on. You don't want to be in a situation where, okay, you do nothing about it, and next minute, all the money you had has run out because maybe you're spending too much, or the risk you took wasn't within your risk tolerance. So generally, I'll say 20 hours or less in a year, that's passive income. If you're spending more time on that, it doesn't mean it's not passive, but it's just not as passive as I think you would like it to be. And there are options there to make things more passive. You can get to a stage where real estate, stocks, and other types of investments are in a passive state for you. But generally it takes time before it gets there. So it's not something that generally just, okay, you start now and yep, it's fully passive and that's it. Why is passive income important as well? Passive income gives you financial stability, and it actually helps you still grow your funds, and it gives you the ability to focus on on other things in your life. Okay. So, and there is a huge psychological benefit with something passive. You really feel confident, you really feel you're in a position where things can go your way, or you can do the things you want to, obviously within a certain limit every time. So when it comes to setting up passive income, you really need to understand, okay, is your real estate investment, is it as passive as it can be? Are your stocks, is it passive as it can? Generally, when people are investing in individual stocks, it's actually not a passive thing, because you don't put your money in individual stocks and just forget about it, or only look at it for 20 hours in a day. So while as if you're using managed funds or ETFs, those are more passive than investing in individual stocks. And same with real estate. Some properties need a little more attention than others, and if you're spending lots of time managing that property or making decisions on that, then that is not really as passive as it should be. So now, in terms of early stages of life or early stages of your wealth creation, what should you be doing? We've talked about budgeting and how that's important, and allocating funds. And one other concept that I like is just ensuring you can use debt, considering how some debts can actually ensure your funds are growing. So the concept of debt is very important as well, or rather it's unique, because some people don't actually categorize debt, but you can and you should. So there's bad debt, there's good debt, and there's smart debt. Okay. So bad debt is actually taking out money to invest in something that doesn't create value for you and is not tax deductible. So if you think about it, there's no benefit of that debt. It might be a very psychological benefit, but then you should not be using debt for just psychological benefits. Okay. Classic example as well is taking out some money to fund your wedding, taking out some money to buy a car, taking out some money to go on holidays. When I say taking out money, taking out debt, those are actually bad debts, because they don't return any dividends for you. And, the interest on that is not tax deductible. So that's bad debt. Good debt, on the other hand, is, relating to an asset that it can grow in value. However, the interest you pay on that debt is not tax deductible. So a classic example, which many people have, is the loan on your principal place of residence. Generally, you cannot claim that as a tax deduction. Okay, while as the value of the house can grow, the interest you pay on that will not be tax deductible. So that is good debt. It's not the smartest debt you can have, but it's something sometimes it's just necessary to have, and it's better than bad debt, obviously. Smart debt, which is the best of the best, is something that can give you a return, and you can also get some tax benefits on that as well. So a classic example is having an investment property, borrowing on a margin loan, or borrowing to invest in stocks or other assets that can actually give you more value with that. So I think in the early stages of life, people really need to consider how they can use that to really get to where they want to go to, because that makes your money work a lot harder. And that gives you the ability to create more wealth, okay? Because whatever you earn past the interest you're paying is all yours, and then you get to keep that. So it's a good way to actually build wealth. In terms of impact on spending habits and debt management as well, generally, by the time you start moving away from bad debt to smart debt, you see that your habit with debt changes, and then the understanding of it actually helps you get to a good position in the future. So early stages of life, I definitely like encouraging my clients to use as much smart debt as possible, especially along with the right risk tolerance, because if you don't combine those two together, you run into trouble. Another good investment that I like for clients early stage is, really considering investment growth bonds. I love investment growth bonds. I think they're such a good tool to help you build long-term wealth. And it has to be long-term wealth because as some people may not know, an investment growth bond has a few criteria linked to it. And if you hit those after 10 years, whatever you earn on that bond is not added to your tax returns, which is just amazing because you do the right things for 10 years. And then after that, you're in such a position where, you have this tax effective income. After that 10th year, you're in a position where you can take out funds from that, and it's very tax effective. So what I usually do for my young clients or clients just starting to build wealth is, you can start putting a small amount and build that over time. And then in 10 years time, you've built something where, it's very effective and it's created lots of wealth for you in that regard. So one of the things with investment growth bonds as well, because it's a long time, it's 10 years, you really need to ensure you're not pouring all your money into that straight away. It differs from client to client because, for example, if we're talking about an older client trying to invest for their grandkids and they have a lot more wealth to put in, you can just put in a lump sum, okay? And that can work well as well because if that lump sum stays there for 10 years, that can be passed on to the kids. So it really depends. But however, it's a long game. So as long as you can do that effectively, you've built something. So investment growth bonds are a tool that I love putting in place for lots of clients who are starting to build wealth. One of the things I've noticed as well in terms of early stages, people generally start with property, and there's nothing wrong with property in terms of starting out because, the bank will give you 80% of that, most of the time. And that kind of just helps you grow your wealth. And generally, you live in it or you leave it as an investment property. What happens, though, is people then just stop there or they just maintain only property. Okay, I think over time, you need to be diversifying away from property because that is the one asset on the one street, in the one suburb, in the one state, in the one country. Except you can have multiple across the world. And in different states, you're not diversified enough. And property is such a unique asset that, no two properties are the same. So it actually limits your diversification to a huge amount. So one thing you should be doing in the early stages of building wealth is diversifying away from that. And diversifying away from property doesn't mean that, you have a property and then you have a share portfolio of about $200,000 early stages and you might see a good opportunity to buy another property. Doesn't mean you shouldn't sell the assets in the share portfolio, but it just means you're very conscious as to, okay, you really need to build something around that property. Over time, as you get over to the deaccumulation stage or later in life, you definitely want to have a diversified portfolio where your property portfolio probably should be less than 50% of your whole portfolio. So diversify away from property is a key thing as well as you start early on in wealth building. Okay, so one of the clients that came in, she was in her early 20s and she came in and she just really wanted to invest some funds. And I explained the process to her. And she was like, look, she doesn't have the time, she doesn't have the knowledge, and she wants to get it right from the start. And she just really needed my guidance to help her set something up. And based on the amount she wanted to invest as well, it's not something we had to see her regularly to update that investment. And it's just something simple to actually get her going. So what we did was after further discussions as well, I explained to her that, look, we can also look at your superannuation accounts and set that up for the future for you, as well as start this small investment portfolio. So it was a fairly straightforward case because she's young. Lots of things are going to come up in her life later on. And, all of those things would dictate what she does then. But at that point in time, it was like, okay, grow your super, change the way that is invested to be aligned to things you can invest. Things that would grow for you over the long term. So we increased the risk. I explained the concept of capacity and willingness to her. Her willingness wasn't there before we started the meeting, but after explaining and really showing her how things work, the willingness was there to take a calculated amount of risk in her super. We were able to change that. And just based on that, we showed her that based on the small change now, and if life just continued the way it is with inflation in her salary and what goes into super, she's literally doubling the amount she gets when she finally retires, which is a small change now, which was amazing. And then we also set up the small portfolio for her. And that portfolio was just her putting $500. So something very small. I said very young, but she was like, I really just need to get started. I've been hearing about this investing. I have no idea. So something, just put $500 per month and, set that up so it can grow for her for any other future goal that she wants. And she was really pleased with that, which is just a very simple example of how we help clients that don't have the time, don't have the knowledge, but really want to get something going. Another example as well was a couple, and the couple in their mid 30s, so they just starting life out, still thinking about if they want kids, both on great incomes and just starting to build wealth. Okay. So the first thing we did for them is like, okay, clarified your goals. What do you want? They're like, well, we just want to build wealth. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? They're like, well, we want to build wealth in such a way that if we decide to retire in 15 to 20 years time, we have the ability to do that. So all of a sudden that was a good benchmark for us to work with. And we can walk backwards as to what you should be putting in now. And if you put in that amount over, that 15-year time frame, or if you actually increase that, what does that look like? So the couple didn't have a house as well. So one of the things we looked at is like, okay, well, you need to get into your first home. And, they already had savings for that, which was good. So got them, connected them with a mortgage broker who helped them get them the loan for their first home, got them into their first home, set up your superannuation accounts for them. And very similar to the example I just gave before now, and that actually showed them a lot more gains, not double, because obviously you're in your 30s now, not your 20s. And we also set up 2 investment accounts for them. So one is just a normal investment for if they need funds within the next 5 to 10 years, because there was also a plan that one of them might step back from work, depending on how things go. So we had that investment account, and we also had the investment growth pot account as well, which can actually help them draw funds from that when they decide to stop working. And that was important because, yes, your super will give you retirement funds, but there is a time frame as to when you can access your super. So if you want to retire before 60, where's your money going to come from? You need to set up an investment that can feed you until you can access your super. So we did that for them, and we also set them up with some protection. I will be talking about protection in the next episode so you can fully understand that. But that's a client where, we went through a lot with them to actually set them up. And, those are the kind of clients that are at the right stage um, to be able to sit down and get advice, because they just got married and it was something that they wanted to work together with. And I guess that's another value of just seeing a professional, because two people come together, they might have slightly different concepts or ideas about wealth creation. But if we sit down together and kind of merge those two ideas together into a joint plan, it just works out a lot better for them. So that was that example. The last example had to do with a client actually in the latter stages of life as well. So, these clients of mine, when they first came to me, they were at late 60s, but they still wanted to grow wealth. And the idea about growing wealth for them then was just to pass on to the next generation and to ensure the funds are not just sitting down there. Generally, people at that age, if you're still planning for your life stage, the level of risk and wealth creation would actually reduce. It would be more of a deaccumulation. While as if you have enough for yourself and to last your life expectancy, is now okay planning how do we pass this amount to the kids. But before we do that, how do we make it work as effectively as possible? And how can we actually pass that on in a very tax effective way for the kids? So when I talk about wealth creation, it depends on a few things, but it's not just age based, so people in their late 60s or 70s can be in a position to build lots of wealth for the future, generally for the next generation, but that is something that can be done as well. So generally with all these, I know lots of information is out there these days, and generally it's the action that doesn't get done, so the few tips that I've been giving now are still okay. In terms of building wealth, you work on your budget, you start investing, you keep investing, and then you have a plan. Those are very basic, but not many people do it. So part of the idea of showing or explaining how advisors help clients and what we do is for people to actually start doing stuff. Okay, so get up and do something, because if you do that, you're going to be in a lot better situation long term, and then you can actually find the benefit, or rather you would get the benefit of starting early. One of the things with wealth creation as well is, there's no real cost. When I say real cost, it's not like someone knocks on your door every year and saying, okay, you haven't wealth created this year, you need to pay us for what you've lost. It's an opportunity cost. And that opportunity cost is, well, you don't do anything, a year passes, you've lost 10% of what you could have earned on that investment. 2 year passes, that's the snowball as to what you lose. So you really need to know that, yes, you are actually paying a price for not doing anything, even though it might not be an actual price. It's not like tax. It's not like your taxes where taxman comes like, yep, you owe us this every year. No. So, but investing, there's a huge opportunity cost for not doing anything. Going back to the early example of the early 20 years old person, she would have lost a few $1 million if she did not do anything and just left it until, her 40s. But now she has actually set that up, and she's in a position where she has reduced or even completely eliminated the opportunity cost of not doing anything. And one of the things as well with wealth creation, use some smart debt, know the difference as well, and just keep going. The market goes up and down. It's something that is very temperamental, as I said in one of my previous podcasts. So you just need to do what you can, but keep moving. So when I think about wealth creation, I always try to use analogies that people understand, because then it can really help things sink in. And the one that I can really think about is of a bamboo tree. Okay, so when you first plant a bamboo seed, what happens is within the first 5 years, it's only a small shoot that comes out. Nothing else. You don't really see anything else, and that's just because underneath, the roots are actually expanding and getting really stronger. They're going deep and wide into the soil. So just like the bamboo tree, you need to lay the right foundations for your investments, You need to be patient, you need to persevere, and you need to have faith in the process. And all those come with choosing the right strategy, doing the right things, and having a plan in place. And you would see that your investments can grow and you would have a huge amount of wealth created for you in the long term. Okay, so now you've heard all about the bamboo seed. I need you to go out there, plant your bamboo seed, let it start growing deep and wide, laying the right foundations for you to grow your wealth, so that, even if you don't see a shoot pop up and grow 80 feet straight away, towards the long term, you'd look back and be like, yep, I'm happy with this 80-foot bamboo.